Night was falling over the city, and the skyscrapers stood like silent guardians against a sky of deep blue and fading amber. Streetlights flickered on in a soothing rhythm, illuminating sidewalks that were mostly empty now, since most people had already retreated to the warmth of their homes. A cool wind carried the scent of gasoline and asphalt, dancing through a small gas station on the outskirts of town. Its neon signs sputtered overhead, casting jumpy reflections on the cracked pavement below. A massive black SUV rolled slowly into the lot, its powerful engine rumbling softly as it neared the pumps. Behind the wheel sat Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq to fans worldwide, a man whose presence alone could fill an entire stadium. His day had been long and draining: meetings, interviews, photo ops, and public appearances. All he wanted now was to refuel his SUV and head home. Yet, as he stepped out of his car to pump gas, something caught his eye. A petite, visibly pregnant woman in a worn, oversized uniform was weaving between vehicles. She clutched a squeegee and a small bucket of soapy water, her shoulders stiff but her resolve unwavering. The station's faded logo on her shirt showed she worked there. However, what truly snared Shaq's attention were the two young children nearby. One was a boy, maybe 6, sitting on the concrete, fully absorbed in drawing colored chalk pictures. The other was a little girl, possibly 3 or 4, curled up on a plastic chair with threadbare blanket draped around her. She looked as though she might fall asleep at any moment. Shaq's heart clenched. He recognized desperation and fatigue in the woman's eyes, a look he'd witnessed in countless families struggling to stay afloat. He watched her approach a sedan, offering to clean its windshield in exchange for a small tip. The driver waved her off impatiently, and she retreated with a forced smile, shoulders sagging but not entirely defeated. Determined to understand her situation, Shaq walked over, pausing only to flash a polite nod at a nearby customer who recognized him. For the moment, the basketball legend paid no mind to hushed whispers of "That's Shaq" or the cautious stares. Instead, he called out in his famously deep voice. "Excuse me," he said, beckoning to the woman gently. She turned around, squeegee still in hand, her eyes reflecting both exhaustion and a flicker of hope. "Yes, sir. Can I help you?" Shaq glanced toward her sleeping daughter and chalk-drawing son. "Do you work here every night?" "Yes, I'm on the night shift," she confirmed, her voice shaky but polite. Shaq nodded. "And are those your kids?" The woman's expression softened as she followed his gaze. "Yes, sir. I don't have anyone else to watch them, so I bring them with me." "What about their dad?" The question sounded heavier than Shaq had intended. Her features hardened for just a moment. "He left," she said simply. "When he found out I was pregnant again, he decided he wasn't ready for more responsibility. So it's just us." Shaq introduced himself. "I'm Shaq, by the way," he said, though of course she knew who he was. Her name, she told him, was Lauren. Gently, Shaq crouched down to talk to the young boy. He asked about his chalk drawing, and the boy proudly displayed a sketch of a bright house with multiple rooms. Shaq's chest grew tight with empathy. Such a big dream coming from someone so small. Standing up, he turned back to Lauren. "Would you sit with me for a minute?" He pointed to a worn metal bench near the station's entrance. She hesitated. "I really shouldn't leave my post," she protested quietly. "You're not leaving your post. You're just taking a quick break," Shaq reassured. "Trust me." With a reluctant nod, she joined him on the bench, glancing now and then to ensure her children were safe. Up close, Shaq could see the signs of someone who carried not just her own weight, but that of her entire family. Dark circles under her eyes, a slight tremble in her hands, and a perpetual pinch of worry at the corners of her lips. "Lauren," Shaq began softly, "I see you working hard for your kids, and you've got another on the way. That's not easy, especially on your own." A ghost of a smile tugged at her lips. "It's not," she admitted, pressing a hand gently on her stomach, "but I do what I have to do. We need the money." Shaq leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Any family around?" "Friends." She shook her head. "My mom's sick and lives in another state. I don't want to burden her. Friends are scarce these days. It's just me and my kids, really." In that moment, Shaq knew he couldn't just leave without doing something. It simply wasn't in him to ignore someone trying so hard to give her children a better life. "Lauren, I can't drive away tonight and forget about this," he said, his voice resolute. "I want to help you." She blinked, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. Why? Shaq sighed, shifting on the bench. Because I can, he answered. And because you deserve it, you and those kids. Nobody should do this alone. Tears threatened to spill, but she fought them back, managing a small nod of acceptance. Thank you, she whispered. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Shaq assured her. Get through tonight. I'll be back tomorrow. He pressed a gentle hand to her shoulder and stood. As he walked away, Lauren watched him, her thoughts a swirl of disbelief and cautious optimism. For the first time in a long time, a spark of hope lit up her weary mind. Chapter 2. A Promise Kept. True to his word, Shaq returned the next evening. The gas station was just as dimly lit, the neon signs above flickering like weak beacons against the night. This time, Shaq arrived with a large shopping bag filled with groceries, diapers, and small toys. Lauren was helping a customer at the far pump, but her 6-year-old Jaden spotted Shaq the moment he stepped from his SUV. Mom, the boy called out, racing across the cracked pavement. It's the tall guy from last night. Lauren turned, surprise in her eyes. She wiped her hands on her uniform and approached slowly, as if unsure whether Shaq was real or a mirage. You actually came back. Shaq offered a warm smile and extended the bag. I told you I would. I brought a few essentials for you and the kids. Just some stuff to make life a bit easier. She looked inside. There were cereal boxes, canned goods, fresh produce, diapers, even a soft blanket for the children. She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to, Shaq said simply. Then he glanced toward her coworkers. Got time for another quick break. She hesitated, but her coworker had just arrived, so she agreed. Once again, they sat on a metal bench. Lauren glanced at her children, who were busy squealing over the small surprise toys. Despite her anxiety about accepting charity, she couldn't deny the relief that washed over her. I'd like to know more about you, Shaq said gently. Lauren fiddled with the edge of her uniform. I grew up in a small town, she began, unsure of where to start. She told him about her single mother who juggled 2 jobs, about her dream of becoming a chef, about meeting her husband and getting pregnant before she could finish culinary school. Her voice wavered when she spoke of how her husband left the moment he learned she was pregnant again. I never wanted this life for my kids, she said, eyes downcast. But here we are. Shaq took a slow breath. Listen, I can help. I have resources, connections. Let me use them. She was quiet, uncertainty in her eyes. I've tried to be strong for my children, she said after a moment, but sometimes I feel like I'm barely hanging on. Shaq nodded. You don't have to do it alone anymore, he said, rising from the bench. I'll be in touch soon. Trust me. Chapter 3. The First Rays of Hope. 2 days later, Lauren's phone rang. The caller identified herself as Lisa from Shaq's foundation. The woman's tone was calm, reassuring, and surprisingly matter-of-fact, as if everything that was about to happen was perfectly routine. Shaq told us about you, Lisa explained. We'd like to help with groceries, bills, and medical support. How does tomorrow sound for a visit? Lauren nearly dropped the phone. She could hear her kids bickering in the background over crayons, oblivious to the moment that was about to change their lives. That would be wonderful, she managed to reply, voice shaking with relief. The following day, 2 volunteers showed up at her cramped apartment, lugging heavy bags of groceries and baby supplies. One volunteer handed her a sealed envelope. It stated that her rent for the next 6 months had been paid in full. Lauren nearly broke down from the sheer relief of it all. This is just the start, the volunteer said kindly, patting her shoulder. There's more help on the way. Over the next week, Lauren noticed changes ripple through her life like a series of gentle miracles. Instead of living day to day in fear of eviction or hunger, she could finally exhale. Shaq's foundation had set her up with a short-term safety net so that she could focus on the longer journey ahead. Chapter 4. A Culinary Dream Reignited. Shaq's plan was more than just covering bills. He had learned about Lauren's passion for cooking and wasted no time in setting her up at a local community center known for its culinary training programs. These programs specialized in offering single parents the chance to learn or sharpen job skills, all while providing childcare during class hours. The first day Lauren walked into the community center, nerves made her hands tremble. She glanced around at the bustling kitchen, the bright steel counters, the shelves filled with cooking utensils of every size and purpose. The instructor, Maria, greeted her with a broad smile. "Welcome, Lauren. Grab an apron. You're in good company here." She wasn't the only single parent in the program. There were others who'd been through tough times, too. Some had fled difficult marriages. Others were struggling to pay bills just like her. Yet, every single person in that kitchen understood the power of resilience. Their camaraderie was palpable. The instant Lauren picked up a chef's knife and started slicing vegetables, an old spark reawakened in her. Cooking was more than just a skill to her. It was therapy, art, and home all rolled into one. She forgot her fears in the rhythmic pulse of chopping onions, stirring sauces, and plating dishes with her own flair. Maria quickly recognized Lauren's raw talent, praising her precision and creativity. "You've got the potential to go far," she told Lauren. "Don't you dare give up." Chapter 5. Strengthening Bonds. Meanwhile, Shaq would drop by Lauren's apartment every few days. Each visit was filled with small acts of kindness that went straight to the heart. He brought storybooks for Jaden, who was falling in love with reading, and stuffed animals for Mia, who toted them around like precious treasures. For Lauren, he arrived one evening with a set of chef's knives, glinting professional blades that felt like a promise of a brighter future. Sometimes Shaq would take them out to a nearby park, letting Jaden burn off his endless energy and Mia toddle around happily in the fresh air. Lauren would watch from a bench, eyes tearing up at the simple, beautiful joys she once thought they could never afford. One evening, Shaq showed up unexpectedly at the community center, catching Lauren in the middle of preparing a velvety butternut squash soup. He stayed near the door, quietly observing as she moved from pot to pot, tasting, adjusting seasoning, stirring with deliberate care. The pride on her face was radiant. When class wrapped, she found him in the hallway. "Hey, what are you doing here?" she teased. "Checking in on my star culinary student," he replied, flashing a playful grin. "Heard you're doing great things." Lauren blushed under his praise. "I'm learning a lot. It feels incredible." Shaq's expression grew warm, and he gestured for her to follow him outside. He led her to the back of his SUV and opened the trunk, revealing a large sign that read, "Lauren's Kitchen coming soon." Her jaw dropped. "Shaq, what is this?" "I found a small space downtown. Perfect spot for a cafe or a cozy little restaurant," he explained. "I want to help you open your own place." Lauren's vision blurred as tears of gratitude welled up. How can I ever repay you?" Shaq rested a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You don't owe me anything. Just promise, when you can, you'll help someone else. Pass it forward." Chapter 6. Building a Future. Over the next few weeks, Lauren practically lived in a whirlwind of excitement and hard work. By day, she honed her culinary skills at the community center. By evening, she coordinated with contractors Shaq had introduced her to, reviewing color palettes for walls, scouting thrift stores for furniture that would give her soon-to-be cafe a welcoming charm. The space itself was modest, a narrow storefront with enough room for a few tables and a visible kitchen area, so patrons could watch the chef in action. Walls were painted a soft, inviting yellow, and local artists donated paintings of cityscapes, flowers, and abstract designs to add a cozy vibe. Lauren insisted on an open kitchen layout. She wanted to chat with customers, answer questions, and make them feel like guests in her own home. Shaq stood by her side, offering advice and moral support, always reminding her that this place was hers. Meanwhile, Jaden and Mia adapted to their new normal, stable living conditions, an almost stocked fridge, and a mother who was no longer drowning in worry. Their laughter became a routine soundtrack to Lauren's life, a testament that they were no longer in perpetual survival mode. Chapter 7. The Grand Opening. After weeks of planning, painting, cooking samples, and final touch-ups, the big day arrived. Lauren's Kitchen, its sign gleaming under bright sunlight, open to the public. Word had spread throughout the community center, Shaq's foundation, and local media outlets that a new cafe was opening with a backstory bound to inspire. Friends, neighbors, and even curious strangers gathered outside before the doors officially opened. They peered through the windows, enthralled by the homey interior, and the crisp smell of baked bread drifting into the street. Inside, Jaden darted from table to table, placing menus, while Mia, wearing a little apron of her own, offered bright smiles to every guest. Lauren moved behind the counter, heart pounding with excitement. She saw Shaq sitting at the back corner table, smiling like a proud family member at graduation. She offered him a grateful nod, and he raised his glass of water in a silent toast. Customers trickled in, sampled her dishes, and soon the cafe was alive with the hum of conversation, the clinking of plates, and bursts of laughter. Local news cameras even swung by to capture the heartwarming grand opening. By lunchtime, they were packed, every seat filled by people eager to taste Lauren's cooking and support her new venture. During a brief lull, Lauren finally emerged from the kitchen, a sheen of sweat on her forehead but a dazzling smile lighting her face. Shaq waved her over, and she joined him. "You did it," he said simply, pride resonating in his deep tone. She placed a plate of her signature herb-roasted chicken in front of him. "We did it," she corrected gently. "Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Shaq took a bite, nodding in approval at the savory, perfectly balanced flavors. "This is really good," he joked. "Don't be surprised if a 5-star reviewer shows up soon." Lauren laughed, wiping her hands on a clean towel. "I'll be ready for them." He glanced around the room at happy customers, at Jaden helping bus a table, and Mia carefully handing out paper napkins. "You're not just surviving anymore. Look at what you're building." Epilogue, a lasting legacy. As evening approached, the cafe's newness failed to dampen the steady flow of customers. Some came for the food, some for the story, others simply because they loved the atmosphere. Jaden and Mia eventually curled up together in a corner booth, drifting off to sleep, exhausted from all the excitement. At closing time, Lauren dimmed the cafe lights, stepping back to savor a final moment of what she had created. In her mind's eye, she saw flashes of all those sleepless nights when she worried about rent, those shifts at the gas station when she felt utterly alone, and that first conversation with Shaq on a worn bench under flickering neon lights. Now reality was different. She had a warm, welcoming place to call her own, a place where she could share her passion and raise her children with hope instead of fear. Before locking the front door, she spotted Shaq standing outside, hands tucked into his jacket pockets, smiling as though he, too, was seeing a dream come to life. They exchanged no words in that moment. They didn't need to. A simple nod of gratitude and understanding passed between them. Because for Shaq, helping Lauren was more than just an act of kindness. It was a statement of what happens when people refuse to ignore someone else's struggle. And for Lauren, Shaq's intervention was a gift that unlocked her potential and gave her children a better tomorrow. No one could have guessed a simple stop at a gas station late one evening would bloom into something so life-changing. Yet life is often like that. Small moments turn into grand opportunities, and a single act of compassion can illuminate the future. In a quiet corner of the city, Lauren's kitchen now stood as a beacon of hope, its light shining for anyone who needed a reminder that dreams can come true, even if they start with a squeegee, a neon-lit parking lot, and a kind-hearted giant named Shaq. If this story moved you, please remember to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. Share it with friends and family to spread a message of kindness, resilience, and the extraordinary power of one person's determination and another's generosity. Together, we can inspire hope one story at a time.